Season 2 of Darkness is a 6-episode podcast examining a series of package bombs that exploded at homes throughout the Austin, Texas area in 2018. The bombs killed 3 people and injured 6 more over a period of nearly 20 days, causing fear to envelop the city during Austin's biggest festival. Hosted by Ashley Miznazi and produced by the Drag Audio Production House, you'll hear emotional stories of resilience from the survivors of these crimes, accounts of pain and recovery from the victims' loved ones, and the questions they still have 3 years later. The podcast takes a closer look at the efforts of law enforcement officials who work to stop the bloodshed, with interviews with the lead investigators for the FBI, ATF, and Austin Police. You'll also hear about how the bombings exposed Austin's racial wounds, as members of Austin's Black community felt they were being targeted by the bomber and ignored by investigators. Listen to Season 2 of Darkness on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Hey, listeners. And a special hey, hi, hello to all you patrons out there. Did you know, Ben, did you know you could join our Patreon for just $1, $3, $5 a month?
I did know that because we run the Patreon. So I would know that.
So if I was someone who was looking to join the Patreon, where would I find that information? Why don't you tell the good folks at home?
You would go to patreon.com and type in the sci-fi sci.
Or the episode notes.
Or the episode notes.
Episode notes.
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
I put them every single week.
Episode notes, one click. You know, most people don't go anywhere virtually if it's more than like 2 clicks.
I'm aware, which is why I put it in the episode notes.
For one click.
Well, Ben doesn't know where to find the link to the Patreon, but I'm telling you here first, listeners. Go to the episode notes of this show. I'll add them here. And with that being said, let's get started with the show. Welcome to the Sci-Fi Side under the Believe Podcast Network. It's a podcast about Black science fiction and fantasy, and I'm going to say staying on the same page of our marriage, but Ben wants me to say, you remember last week you were
at least staying in the same library of our marriage or in the same book of our marriage, because I think it's unreasonable to stay on the same page, as I stated last week.
Right. But actually, if you go look at the YouTube streets, a listener disagreed with you as well and was Team Amber. You can go find that right now. But welcome to the Sci-Fi Side Podcast. Today is episode 78, and we will be discussing the Disney short 20-something directed by Aphton Corbin. Before we get into that, Ben, go find that receipt of somebody having my back real quick. It's on the YouTube. Before we get started, how are you doing today? I think we're both hanging on by a thread per use.
I'm not hanging on by a thread. I'm hanging on by a large hemp rope. But I'm definitely hanging.
It's large in length or girth?
It's both. There's a lot to hold on to.
I'm hanging on by a thread. Why? I think everybody knows I've passed the 17-week mark. I'm in between 17-week, Laura. I'm in between 37 and 38 weeks of pregnancy. Listeners, don't fear, because
she can't even remember numbers.
I know it's getting quite difficult to just exist. But don't worry, listeners, because when it gets closer to the date, we have queued up some incredible interviews for the Sci-Fi Side podcast. So you will still be enjoying sci-fi content even when we are taking our small maternity leave. Okay, so what did one listener say?
Oh, yeah. So this listener...
Say their name.
I think Lori mentioned saying you're on the same book also doesn't make sense, because if your wife is at the end and you're stuck somewhere in the middle, you'll be at odds in your marriage.
Thank you, Lori Rodriguez. We stand. So yeah, per usual, the listeners agree with me, the patrons agree with me, and I'm fabulous. But yes, listeners, don't you fret. We will be still entertaining you even when we are on the break. And then for the patrons, you'll probably start to see me breastfeeding during this podcast.
Absolutely.
We like to do this. This is how we sort of just come together and connect and not kill each other every week.
Yeah, the intentional conversation around us allows me to post-it note things. I'll be like, I'll just bring it up on the Sci-Fi Sci. Like, I'll wait to talk about it. Like, something really annoys me about you, and I'll let me just do it publicly, so that if you get really angry, you'll learn how to control your temper, because it's around multiple people. You know,
like what, Ben? What's something you sticky noted this week?
I don't want to say it because I'm going to be canceled, which is fine. I'd cancel me. But just don't cancel Amber.
You're the one that just said, when I'm annoyed at you, I write something on a sticky note and I bring it on the show. And so I said, for example, what? And now you're going to be canceled.
I realized that the thing that annoyed me about this week that you did is, I think, a little bit petty of me to even bring it up.
Well, I mean, now, don't leave the people hanging. It's a motherfucking show.
I mean,
this is exclusive content.
We should leave them hanging in the same way that both of us are hanging by a thread. This whole week.
I don't understand. Why would you say something so salacious and then not spill the whole tea?
Because some secrets.
You know this is the show, right? You know you're supposed to. I ask you a question, you answer it.
Well, okay. So I made dinner reservations, and you were too busy getting kicked by your unborn child and watching Inventing Anna.
I was.
Yeah, so like the whole thing.
You think you're gonna cancel for?
Well, because I'm annoyed, but of course you should be a little bit.
I have to lean this back. This is how pregnant I am right now. Yeah, I can't do it. I can't keep leaning forward. I tried. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might notice a tone change because, I mean, this might be a really short episode because
Amber's just decided that she can no longer go out to eat today. She made the decision today. She can no longer go out to eat and sit down. Did. We went out to a really nice restaurant this week, a North Pond. It's amazing. Michelin star. We had a very special friend in town. And so we took this friend out to eat, and Amber was just unpleasant eating some of the best food of her life. And that should not be the experience when you go out to eat.
What do you mean I was unpleasant?
You were being kicked, and I kept on seeing you like grimace in between the 4-course meal. Yeah. We also got wine with our meal, and you didn't, so I felt a little bad for that.
Yeah, there was a wine pairing with each course that y'all had, but that's okay. I still genuinely had a good time. I was able to enjoy the ambiance of the restaurant, but I think I've reached the point where going out is not pleasurable anymore. It's not fun for me because it's like I just need to be surrounded by tons of pillows.
Yeah, that's what I said. Just surround me with pillows and frozen pizza. No more Michelin star restaurants for you because they don't do like to go order. There's a great Italian restaurant near us called Antiprima, and I think I made reservations one day, but you were not feeling well, and so I was like, do you all do like takeout? And they're like, no.
Yeah.
The fancier places don't do takeout.
But I want to say this, Ben, because I've cried every day in the past week or so, and they've been gratitude tears because I'm
for me.
Yes, because you just thought that you were going to get maybe canceled for. What even is that? We're not even like popular enough to get canceled, but you just were hard on yourself about making your wife reservations. Like that's really not even a real big deal. But you have been.
Well, I was pissed that you canceled
today.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell. I'm
good at hiding my feelings.
I genuinely prioritized myself today,
I'm
so
glad.
I couldn't tell.
And I actually feel better that we didn't go. So.
Okay, can I say something?
Sorry.
Can I sing to you? Okay. I want to say this. I have been genuinely just crying tears of gratitude because of how supportive and loving and wonderful you've been. I know I give you a lot of shit on the internet streets, but you have really, stepped it up in this past week, in these past weeks. So I feel like I can push through this podcast because I'm doing it with you. I really do. So before anybody gives Ben a hard time, he's been kicking major ass. Like I will literally wake him up at 3 a.m. to be like, I'm just so grateful for you. That's all. Go back to sleep. And you're like, oh, I love you too.
Yeah.
That's good.
Unlike Friday nights and Saturday nights, that's okay.
What do you mean? What are you talking about?
On school nights, it's a little bit more difficult.
To do what?
Wake me up in the middle of the night.
Oh, I was like, to gratitude cry? No, it's not. Not for me.
Yeah.
You're tired?
No, I'm not tired.
Okay.
Not as much as you. Okay, yes, I am tired, but...
You can say you're tired. You've been doing a phenomenal job supporting me, and I think everybody knows that.
I had to bring back my back brace. That's how serious it's gotten.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been having some back issues.
Yeah.
He tried to steal the heating pad from me the other night, and I was like, bitch, no.
My doctor recently prescribed me steroids. I've never had.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I haven't picked them up yet because I feel like it's going to make my dick shrink.
What?
I'm just kidding. That's like a thing that people say.
I mean, that's
steroids.
Baseball roids. That's the A1
yeah, that's
stuff.
like, she's like, this is it's a micro dosage, but because recently I've started working out again after a huge hiatus, but working out a lot like I used to, and I'm experiencing like significant like muscle growth and
significant muscle growth.
Significant, you'll see.
You'll all see.
You'll all see. I'll be fucking ripped.
Oh, I'm learning on this podcast in real time that you've been prescribed steroids.
Well, you haven't asked me how I've been.
What? I asked you every week on the show.
Right, once a week.
Okay. I asked you how you, but you also just admitted that you didn't pick the steroids up. So that's another thing.
Yet.
So how the fuck would I have known
CVS.
that you were prescribed steroids that you were supposed to have been taking? And you know, that's the motherfucking reason why, like, they say that men who are married probably to either other men or women, like, it doesn't matter. Men who are married live longer because their spouses say,
checking
like,
on them. Get
your ass up there and pick up those steroids. So after this show ends, I'm gonna make you go pick them up. Because when did you even go to the doctor?
Last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday. So those meds have just been sitting. Oh my gosh. Well, that's fun. What do you want to talk about? What we watched, because I find it really fun.
We should, but we should also read a podcast rating.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yes.
Sorry, you see how you were doing this when you were sleeping, so you like hopped into it there. We do have one Apple Podcast rating all up in the queue. Pew, pew, pew.
Yeah.
And then was this one just on the Patreon, or is this just what?
Yeah, this was on the Patreon, so.
Okay, so we have two things. We have one Apple Podcast rating that we're going to read, and then we have a recommendation of something we should watch per a patron, and actually we're going to end up watching that next week.
Yes, thank you.
Pending my water doesn't break. Okay.
Or that you can go into labor without your water breaking. I think like 50% of like births, their water doesn't break.
Or either or.
Yeah.
I think the people smelled what I was stepping in.
Okay.
Pending, I don't give literal birth. We'll be watching this movie. But anyway, here's the Apple Podcast rating. It says, it's giving. Talking about the show. First off, I love y'all. It's like Mother God split me into two humans and is allowing the world to be entertained by my life. But anywho, the content is amazing. I love everything about it. The concept was brilliant. Thank you for bringing this vision to life. Keep shining. And shout out to my fellow Georgia Peach Amber. I hail from C-Town. That's Columbus, Georgia. Hey girl, hey. And hey man. We love you too. Amazing work. This is from McMelva.
I love when people give you a compliment, but they also like throw in like one just for me. Like I don't need it, but it's really nice too. It makes me feel special.
You are special, baby.
Yeah.
I was trying not to say that with sarcasm. You are wonderful. And this is from Victoria. I'm not sure which episode Victoria was talking about, but Victoria says this episode was incredible.
The one on Soul.
Soul, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for being a light every day. Ooh. You better, well, I'm a light. We're a light to y'all. We pretty dark to each other. Your creativity and work brings me so much joy. Would y'all be interested in doing A Wrinkle in Time, the movie directed by Ava DuVernay? I've heard nothing but amazing things and would love to hear the side perspective. So yeah.
I have actually. This has been on my radar for a while, and we'll talk about it, but I've not watched it yet just because I've heard such terrible things about it.
Agreed.
So it's nice to hear that somebody has heard good things about it. So we'll go and we'll watch it.
Yeah, I think we've been avoiding it because we did see some funky reviews about it, but we need to stop avoiding things and just meet it head on.
Especially because someone else said it was bad. I hate this. Like, well, have you watched this thing that everybody says is terrible? Have you actually sat down and thought about it, or thought about where it was coming from or the context in which it was said? And most people are like, no, they're just like jumping on the bandwagon.
The what wagon?
The bag wagon.
The bandwagon?
No, the bag wagon.
It's the bandwagon.
I know it's the bandwagon, but I call it the bag wagon because you're actually putting yourself in like a body bag.
Good save there. Yeah, I recently was feeling that way about watching the Kanye West documentary, even though because there's so much going on with like Kanye West and Kim Ye, and I saw that the Kanye West documentary, which kind of has like nothing to do with like, I mean, obviously it's centered around him, but he wasn't who created it or anything like that. But you know how sometimes it'll be like, oh, are you watching the Tekashi 6ix9ine documentary? Like, you a fan of his? Like, that's weird, but that's not true. And so in my brain, I was like, I'm gonna check this out because I've heard really good things about the documentary and how it sort of takes a dark turn at some points. And then I had a thought. I was like, well, I don't want people accidentally seeing me watch this on my Instagram and then being like, oh, so you're Team Kanye, blah, 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 blah. But now I just don't care. I'm going to watch it because I've heard some interesting takes about it.
What we attempt to do on this podcast when it comes to content is to approach it in a more like academic lens. So just because we cover something on the content on the show doesn't mean that we agree with everything that it says. And I think a lot of people don't approach the world in an academic sense. So they assume that because you watch something, you agree with the views that are being
correct
promulgated, or that you can watch something and dislike the creator but understand the point they're trying to make, or disagree with part of what they're saying and agree with other parts, or understanding that we're watching this because it's important for historical context. And something that really struck me was when we interviewed P. Jelly Clark. He made the point, he teaches a film,
Birth of a Nation.
Of a Nation, and he was saying that he makes every single one of his students watch the whole thing. It's like, you need to watch the whole thing to understand racism, to understand film, to understand our history as well. And I think people avoid it because it's bad. And after that episode, I've mentioned this before, but I did show about 15 minutes to my 8th grade students for the historical context, but then also having like a courageous conversation around the themes that were being presented, at this time.
Yeah, but there are a couple of things. One, I'm gonna watch this Kanye West documentary because I love documentaries, and I heard it was really well done and just shows like some different context to a creator that is actually really brilliant despite what's happening now. Two, sometimes you get torn because you're like, me watching this is literally putting more money in this person's pockets. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you get torn. Like if Harvey Weinstein came out with a new thing about his life or something, there would be this like, ooh, I want to hear like what's this angle, whatever. But also his money is behind this, and if I play it, I'm making him more rich. So I think sometimes that's the toy that people have with it. Or a better example would be like the Dave Chappelle, right? Which I've heard mixed reviews from tons of different people, but it's like,
we also haven't seen it, so
we have
should
not.
probably
No,
not
I
say
haven't.
anything
No. I have not seen it. I will, not, but we're not going to sit here and act like there wasn't some controversy around it. And so,
but we don't know any. We've never watched it, so I think for an academic, like you're not supposed to speak on things that you haven't watched or sort of thought through the content.
Correct. Right. I just said that. I'm not vilifying Dave Chappelle in any way. I have not seen it, but there is this level of like, I think with us, because we like to watch things and talk about it through an academic lens, the answer is like, yes, let's actually just like open our minds, watch the thing, and then discuss it later, obviously. But sometimes in this culture of like, damn, if somebody sees me watching this, how many followers am I going to lose, whatever, there is that added pressure. And people can say like, well, it's just social media. Like, what's the big deal? It's like, well, social media is like currency for people right now. So you do have to just watch your step every now and then. But we talking about A Wrinkle in Time. That's what we originally started on. So we saw bad reviews for A Wrinkle in Time, and we will be watching it next week.
Yeah. And maybe we should also watch the Dave Chappelle special.
Yeah, we'll probably watch it.
And then also like read a book and buy a book written by a trans writer, because Dave Chappelle is getting, under fire for being transphobic.
Correct.
And I think like finding that
balance.
Yeah, not even a balance, but just being like, okay, like Dave Chappelle is funny. He said a microaggression or he said something aggressive towards trans people. That's also not okay.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Two
you
things
can
be true
hold
at one time.
those things at the same time. And then also having like a real conversation about that even a small statement by a very powerful comedian with lots of influence can have an extensive and an enormous amount of impact that may or may not have been intended, which, yeah.
I also like watching things once, like, any hysteria around it has died down.
Yeah.
Like, even right now, I'm kind of watching Inventing Anna a couple weeks behind everybody else. Mm-hmm. You know, just because when something first hits, everybody's online talking about all their theories and all their whatever, or I sort of waited to watch And Just Like That also, because that came out a couple months ago at this point, and then I was like, I don't want to see any spoilers, I don't want to see any articles about it, I don't want to see any Chris Noth dialogue. I want to just like come back to this and watch it like free of all of that, you know. That's just me.
Yeah.
Which our podcast does a lovely job of. All right. Ben, would you like to take a quick break?
Absolutely. A break from my problems. A vacation from my problems. You ever watch What About Bob?
No.
Oh.
I think it's the one with Bill Murray, right?
Yeah. It's fun.
Did you want to start a conversation
Nope.
about something right now, or did you want to take a break?
Let's take a break.
This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp Online Therapy. Check them out at betterhelp.com/sci-fi. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Why invest in everything else and not your mind? This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. And the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast listeners get 10% off their first month at betterhelp.com/sci-fi. That's BETTERHELP.com/sci-fi. And we're back.
Hey.
So we watched 20-something. Ben, would you like to give a quick summary about 20-something?
Yeah, it's about a girl who just turned 21 and she's going to the club for the first time. Mm-hmm. With her older sister. You know what this movie made me think about? That 11 story.
Oh, is that the whole summary?
Yeah, that's a summary. Yeah,
okay,
that's
go ahead.
Yeah, it's literally what it is.
It's a 6-minute short. Okay,
it's a 6 minutes. That's all there is to it. But I'm going to read you this amazing paragraph from the short story by Sandra Cisneros called 11. And
ooh.
I'm going to go ahead.
Sorry. Whenever you like clear your spittle in the mic,
I
can only cut so many of those in editing.
Sorry.
You're fine. Love you.
This is from 11 by Sandra Cisneros. What they don't understand about birthdays and what they never tell you is that when you're 11, you're also 10 and 9 and 8 and 7 and 6 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 2 and 1. And when you wake up on your 11th birthday, you expect to feel 11, but you don't. You open your eyes and everything's just like yesterday, only it's today. And you don't even feel 11 at all. You feel like you're still 10. And you are, underneath the year that makes you 11.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it's a very short story. We'll put it. It's available online for free. I love this short story. I've taught it to students before. And it's not as happy as this Pixar short, which ends very happily. And it's also different than the 20-something SZA song as well, which is a beautiful song.
But you still dropped it in here and it's still relevant.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this. It kind of, I remember watching it with Ben and being like, does this count for the show? And then I was like, wait, is it all animation kind of sci-fi and fantasy? And Ben was like, no. I didn't know, like,
Yeah.
when I think about like animated film, there's always some sort of like magic to them.
Yeah.
Right?
I think, yeah, I think I'm curious what our listeners and what Patreon folks say, but what do you think? Is this short, 20-something, is it fantastical, or I would put it under magical realism? It's a 2D animation. Yeah. I mean, so I'm thinking of films like Waltz with Bashir, which is about, the Lebanon Civil War, and not fantasy, and lots of comics that are hyper realistic. So like Are You My Mother and Fun Home, right? These are animation comics that are realistic, autobiographical. And so for me it felt more like magical realism because you do see a big plot point is that as this young girl is going to the club for the first time, she is walking in and you physically see her 10-year-old self, her 16-year-old self, and her like 10-month-year-old self.
1-year-old. Mm-hmm. It's like 1, 10, 16.
Yeah, 1, 10, 16. And they're all sort of vying and conflicting and how to best act in this club for the first time. And it's exactly like the short story 11, where you are all these young ages at the same time, and you are constantly acting childish in certain points, which I see from you like daily, you know? Like you revert back to this like child in a good way.
There's a literal child inside of
Yeah,
me.
so weren't you telling me that part of the way of
dig.
preparing for pregnancy is that you start doing more like child-like things, like eating cereal and watching like the Proud Family, things that you watched as a kid and stuff like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if other pregnant people have experienced that before, but there's a point in your pregnancy where you're like, oh, I would just really love some Captain Crunch right now. And I haven't eaten Captain Crunch in years, but there's something about like, oh, there's a little child in me, so let me do some of those things I used to do. It's super strange, but I'm certain I'm not alone with that.
You know, I was thinking because when you're in your third trimester, it's very important what you eat because you can start developing like cravings for the baby when they get older. So like eating fancier food will like develop your child's taste buds.
Okay, yeah, say that again because you said I start developing cravings for the baby.
Yeah, you Amber are actually developing.
I start craving baby.
Yeah, you develop cravings for the baby.
Yeah, so the child's taste buds are being developed
by your decisions.
Me, yes.
Yes.
Not
but
me.
You don't want to
craving
eat
human flesh. Yeah.
I mean, that would
way
also make
that.
an interesting story. Like that one of the cravings for a pregnant woman is to eat human flesh, sort of like the Santa Claus diet or something.
Yeah. Oh, I do remember that.
That's a great, because that's fantasy, not, black science fiction or fantasy. But yeah. Anyway, so you're doing a good job. So I was thinking if our kid ever decides to have a kid and she gets pregnant, I wonder like what type of cravings she'll have as a kid, because we're not raising our child with Captain Crunch. It's going to be like, Chicago brunches and sushi for dinner.
Yeah, but she might hit a bowl of Fruity Pebbles every now and then.
Absolutely not.
We'll see, Ben. You have all these absolute rules that are going to just be completely shattered when it comes to...
I understand.
Okay, I just want you to make sure, because
I understand.
Every other day... So Ben has this thing where he is always on me about how I say like always and never when I'm starting arguments with him, which is something I'm working to take out of my rhetoric. I'm like, you always are late. You never take me out, which are all not true. So I've been catching myself saying always and never and removing that. But you are the king of like, absolutely not. Absolutely.
I have boundaries.
Everything is absolute with you, which is kind of like the cousins to always and never. And I think you should acknowledge that. But let me say this. So I hyper broke this 6-minute SparksShorts down, right? So at the very beginning of the SparksShorts, there's this cocktail menu, and Gia picks up the cocktail menu, and it's completely all in gibberish, so she can't read it. So they're creating this like, oh, like none of these drinks mean anything to her. So I think we all experienced that when we first turned 21, right? Like we're looking at this menu of drinks and we're like, what the fuck do we order? Because I want to seem like cool and adult and whatever. Do you remember some of those like early drinks that you ordered?
Oh, absolutely.
All right, what were your go-to drinks as a 21-year-old?
I remember like going to an improv like bar for a date, and I just turned fairly young, and I
went to an improv bar as a 21-year-old.
Yeah, it was in New York City. This
okay.
Yeah, it was. I don't even remember what it was.
Socialite.
But this person that was interested in me, and I should have been interested in her, but I wasn't at the time. I think I'd just broken up with my girlfriend of like, I don't know, 3 years or something. 2 years. And I didn't drink in college. So we go out and I'm like, oh, at this point, I just want to get drunk. So I just ordered things based on alcohol content. and all they were serving
Ooh.
was beer. And so they bring me this like stout, and I never had a stout before. It was the most disgusting thing ever. It's so like milky and heavy. I thought I was like, I don't know, eating my own semen or something. It had a sour taste to it.
There's a thickness to it, but
No.
I wouldn't say stout
It was
tastes
semen
that bad.
thickness. This beer was disgusting. And then another time we went to an Irish bar.
You in the same rebound?
No. Some friends from college and
Okay.
like I had Irish nachos for the first time, which is just French fries with everything else you put on nachos.
Okay.
And everyone was getting Guinness. I was like, I've never had a Guinness before.
Another stout. Which you didn't know at the time, probably.
I didn't. Yeah. And so I try it. I'm like, this is disgusting. I hate beer. It's so gross.
They probably all didn't know either.
I don't know. Yeah. It's just like what you do. You're at an Irish bar and you're American. You get Guinness.
Yeah, like that's
made across this,
you don't
across
have
the
to
way in New Jersey.
Yes, you don't have to do much thinking if you just order a Guinness at an Irish bar.
Yeah.
I remember my early go-to drinks were just like the Moscato,
the sweet,
it's
the
like
sugary.
any sweet one, so Moscato and amaretto sours.
Yeah. Yep.
And so now, like if I go out somewhere and I hear like, some pretty young thing order like, can I get an amaretto sour? Or can I get a whiskey sour? Like those are like, oh, you're young.
Yeah.
Precious. Do you remember where you were on your 21st birthday?
Yeah, I was in Israel. I was in Jerusalem.
Uh-oh, controversy. I'm just kidding.
No, yeah,
Why
I was
were
in
you- why were you
Jerusalem. I was doing a study abroad, and I was spending my time in between Palestine and Jerusalem, studying Hebrew, studying Arabic, and studying Middle Eastern politics. But basic things.
So you did not get wasted.
I got wasted.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah, I got very wasted. I got very drunk. I was at this in Jerusalem. You can drink, or like at least East Jerusalem, which is Palestinian, and is super oppressed, and it's awful, disgusting. You can't drink there. It's mostly Muslim. There are Christians. I mean, well, you can, but you want it out of respect. But in West Jerusalem, which is very nice, I would consider it the difference between the north and south side of Chicago. It's basically the same thing as far as like resources and funding.
Which one's south?
South would be the Palestinians, so that would be East Jerusalem, and West Jerusalem would be like the north side. It has like a very nice, very modern mix of like European and American, and so you can go to a bar, and we went to a bar, and you get like unlimited popcorn and like hookah and beer.
Nice. What were you doing there?
At the bar?
Just in Jerusalem in general, or?
I was studying Arabic and
was it
Hebrew.
study abroad?
It was a study abroad.
Okay,
yeah.
thank you. Cool.
Yeah, I think I mentioned that.
Faded. I'm just kidding.
And then I lost my virginity, I think like the next day.
Oh, your virginity.
My virginity.
On the
Near
west west side of
No, it
Jerusalem.
was in Palestine. It wasn't West Jerusalem. I was staying in Palestine.
And you were you wasted when you lost your virginity? We'll put air quotes.
No, I wasn't wasted. But I also like walked through like an ancient ruin right before. It was pretty sexy.
Damn, yeah, no. I think Jerry Springer was on when I first had sex with my high school boyfriend. So that's fun. A little different.
I think 21 you were
You
I was
were
21.
21. You
Yeah.
had just turned 21, so you got laid. You were traveling abroad.
Yeah, it was great.
And I was probably 17 or 18.
We had very different experiences.
Yeah, we did. And that's all right.
And that's part of marriage.
It is. I'm going to share where I was on my 21st, if you care to hear. Just because we're talking about, Gia hitting her first club. So I was on a cruise. I probably told you this, but my friends and I decided to do a cruise that spring break in the Caribbean. And when I bought I could not drink at the bar because when I bought the cruise ticket, I was 20 and I turned 21 on the boat, but my ticket said I was 20.
Yep.
So when you got on the boat, everybody who was 21 or over had like a wristband or something, which I did not get. So it was very difficult. I'm pretty sure I probably still found a way to drink because my friends were like, we'll just buy you a drink at the bar and then slide it to you. And then you just throw it back real quick. But it was very, of course I had drank before I was 21 or whatever, but it was just so funny that like when I actually turned 21 and was legitimately showing the bartenders in the club, they were like, sorry, when you purchased a ticket to get on this cruise ship, you were only 20 years old. So they didn't honor it. But, you know, it was one of those cruises where when you docked places like in Jamaica or whatever, if you were 18, you could drink anyway. So you know me. I still found my way to the bottle. Life finds a way.
You know, it's fascinating that this is a Pixar short, and this is the kind of conversation it elicits, like where you lost your virginity and where you first got wasted, like where you first got your drink when you were 21. I feel like these Pixar shorts are trying to feel out how like progressive or how, because this is targeted toward an older audience, and I think that's very interesting that they're deciding to do that.
Yeah, one of the big things that this short discusses past like alcohol and things like that is just this idea of how we are expected to have adulting figured out. And when we don't just have adulting figured out, we just feel like a kid again. Like, and I think we all had that moment of, I don't know, the first time you like didn't get your security deposit back, or the first time your car got towed. Like I remember, so I went to college in my hometown. So I always sort of had a safety net, and I'm not talking like it was 20 minutes away. It was literally like I was born and raised in Athens, Georgia, and I went to school in the University of Georgia, which is in the same exact town. So my college was like 7 to 10 minutes away, the physical building from my childhood home. Which makes sense because my mom went to the same college. So it's like she moved to Athens, stayed there. And I mean, even on Sundays, all of my college friends would just go to my parents' house and we'd all just eat for free because, you know, we're all broke college students and stuff like that. So right after college, I moved to Chicago, which was very different because obviously like anytime anything went wrong, I could just call my parents at the University of Georgia. And things didn't really go wrong because even so, I had sort of like, Athens is small enough where like I could see somebody I knew from church at the grocery store or whatever. You know, every time we go back to Athens, we see somebody that I knew growing up. Whereas Chicago felt very much like, oh my God, my car doesn't have snow tires. Like I wouldn't have even known that that's something I needed. Or I remember the first time my car got towed in Chicago, there was some old black man on his porch and he was like, they took it. I was like, excuse me, what? He's like, they took it. I'm like, they took it where? He's like, I don't know, call the tow company. I was like, what? Like, how would you even know which tow company to call? Like, there's nothing around here. Just like figuring out those things, you know?
Damn. Yeah. And in this, they show that earlier, you know, the 16-year-old self, when the 16-year-old takes over the body, she crashed a car. The 10-year-old tried to put together furniture. All the furniture fell apart. And the 1-year-old sort of eats sloppily, right? But they're all part of the same person because we have these elements of ourselves that we revert back to. And I think that's something to celebrate. Sometimes you should eat like a slob, you know?
Yeah. Or sometimes you just like, I don't know, what do you have a memory that you really remember? Like, okay, I thought I was an adult and now this thing just happened and I'm sort of just like left here to figure out how to fix it. Do you remember some of those things when you first moved to Chicago, or, you know, just a part of adulting?
Oh yeah, I think like anything health insurance wise, trying to figure out health insurance, trying to figure out like payment plans for different things, or thinking that your insurance covered one thing and turned out your insurance didn't cover that. So
like what? I'm asking like specifically.
I mean,
what happened? It sounds like you have a story. You're
it is my fault, but you had a therapist bill. And I had told you I'd given you.
Oh, this is recent.
This is recent.
I meant 20-something, not 30-something.
No, this is 30-something.
Go ahead. You can air me out.
Because I was going through our taxes. Well, this is my fault. I was going through our taxes. I'm like, why do we have a $2,000 health bill? I was like, who, what happened? I was like, oh, this. And I was like, who is? And it said the name of somebody. And I Googled the name, and it says, you know, the LCSW or whatever. And I was like, it was your past therapist who tried to like hold us up. But I had messed up because I had changed insurance without letting Amber know because the insurance is through my name. And so I had fucked that up, and it was like a $2,000 mistake that our insurance would not cover. And we just had to pay it because the therapist was, not giving us enough time to sort of figure out. It was awful.
And she switched it up real quick too. She's like, well, I got kids to feed too. I was like,
so
no,
I'm gonna send it to collections, and this was only a week.
Yeah, it wasn't even like anything long.
Anyway, not a huge deal, but
you can't think of anything else that you specifically did in your 20-somethings, like
my 20-something
pre-Amber.
I think. Oh yeah, like working for a service year program for like a religious organization. What a fucking dumbass decision that was.
Well, it brought you here.
Yeah, but there's lots of things that could have brought me here, like a job, like a real job.
So why don't you give people the full? You don't have to name the service year program, but can you give people like the full scope of like
just like any AmeriCorps program? They promise you community. They promise you like job entry. All this fucking bullshit.
You got community
bullshit, and they pay you like $200 a fucking month. With it's awful. It's a fucking scam.
Okay, if you cuss one more time, I won't be able to put this on YouTube. Yes.
To build off of this idea of like hyper capitalism, it's disgusting. It's absolutely gross. I think no one should ever do a service year program. They should just pay young people. They should pay young people their worth. And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. But young people don't have any experience. I don't agree that you should pay $200 a month. But
they're young, but they can build experience. You don't pay them, essentially with their rent and everything. Maybe a total of $10,000 a year.
Yeah, no, that's a joke. I agree that it's a joke, but it's like, what do you expect to pay someone with
a living wage?
With no experience?
We have education.
Fresh out of college.
You teach them. You spend money and you teach them. You put time and effort and money into developing them and not adding all this stress of like financial anxiety.
Did they walk y'all through that when they did the intro to the program? I'm not trying to be shady at all. I did a service year program as well. I did Teach for America.
Yeah, sure. Sure. I don't know what I was thinking. I was not thinking clearly.
I hear. Well, because in our brains, we don't know how much we need to live.
Yeah, I thought it was like an easy entryway, but I realized that I had enough education and I could have done something like TFA or another teaching year program. Mm-hmm. That's what I should have done instead. It was a big fucking mistake. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't do service year programs.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends on TFA was 2 years and it brought me to Chicago, but we did two very different service year programs, and I was making a livable wage when I did Teach for America. Also,
there are teaching programs that can qualify you for like steps and lanes within the Chicago public school system. So if you want to be a teacher in Chicago, I would not recommend going through TFA. It's still scammy as shit. Like, like there are better programs.
You said it. Allegedly. Say allegedly.
There are better. It depends on the service year program, of course. But I think even just this idea of service programs are incredibly problematic and incredibly predatory on people who have really good hearts and who want to be helpful, but they don't understand or know the people who want to be part of these programs. They don't understand the need of like financial security and I don't know. I think the whole system is just fucked up, and these service year programs are like putting a Band-Aid on like a slit throat. Oh. And the slit throat is the ills that plague America through like, white supremacy, capitalism, and this need to just build endless wealth. So unregulated capitalism, like complete unmarketed free market, which we don't have an unregulated free market, but in many ways, Disney historically has been able to pay off Florida lawmakers so that they don't have to give full-time benefits. They don't have to give benefits to speaking of Disney, give benefits for some of their workers, right? And so there's been this very like reciprocal relationship between Disney and Florida lawmakers for very long. And recently there's been a rift because of the this is not the name of the bill, but the Don't Say Gay bill. So Disney and Florida lawmakers have started to deviate from each other. So yeah, I think the whole system is just fucked up.
Okay. So if you could, I was going to ask you if you could tell your 20-something self not to do 3 big things, what would they be? I know what one of them is. Don't join a service year program. Give me 2 others.
Don't study English literature for your bachelor. No, I think I would have still done that.
I thought you said a theology.
And English. I had a
double major.
Yeah, in religion and English. I probably would have not gone to a Christian school.
Okay.
But again, like that's difficult because I'm very happy that I got to meet the people, but I still realized it was super limiting in a lot of ways. And I was thinking about I had one woman professor.
Gotcha.
My whole year there.
So no service year, maybe consider some other college options.
Private, college institution. I would say just generally no private, even if it's Catholic or Christian. Keep it public. What else? 3. Probably try to have sex more. Like have as much sex as you can in your 20s.
Do you regret that you have a lower body count?
No. I don't care about that.
Let's talk about body count.
No,
that's what
I know. Maybe just like be
the
more.
Man on the podcast like to talk about.
Yeah, not body count. Just like no, I would say.
You sound like Miss America.
That's not really.
I would have to say. World peace. Yeah, what would you say about sex and sexuality and experimenting and things?
Maybe probably do more of that in your 20s.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably do more of it. But I don't know. I feel really happy in my 20s. I read a lot of comic books and I read a lot of books and I spent a lot of time alone.
Well, while we were out here having incredible sex and learning how to give decent blowjobs, you were reading Calvin and Hobbes.
I was reading. I would say there was a point maybe when I turned 25 where I stopped working out or running as much because I got too busy with my job. And I was at this time like a teacher, or I was in grad school, and I would have said like, oh, just keep running. You should have kept running. Keep taking care of your physical body.
What's something that you're very proud that you did in your 20s?
Meeting you. I'm very proud that I just continued to pursue our relationship because we were away for like a month after meeting you and hanging out. I went away for like a month, and you had thought that that relationship would just fall off. Nothing would happen.
Yeah, we did meet on Tinder though.
Yeah, I called you every day and I wrote you letters.
You did.
And I'm very proud that because I knew you were special and I think you knew I was special. And I'm glad I just kept pursuing that,
That.
I'm very proud of that. I was like 20, I guess I was 25, yeah.
Oh, we love it.
Yeah. What about you? What's one thing that you would tell your 20-something to not do?
Oh, 3 big no's. I would tell myself one that it's okay to break up with friends.
Yeah.
Like friends you feel like, well, we share this thing in common, or it's okay that this is just a friend I can go to brunch with. It doesn't mean that, and it's really just like that the older you get, you don't just want friends you can go to brunch with. You do want quality relationships and friendships, and just you want to be able to and I'm not talking about like having to cut off a whole bunch of friends, but the older you get, you do outgrow people. And sometimes you're like, damn, there were so many nights where I just did what this person wanted to do for fun instead of what I wanted to do. And now we're not even friends anymore. So it just feels like wasted time, but not the end of the world. I definitely would have, I know that this isn't that big of a deal, but similar to you, I wish I would have sort of believed in plan A first and studied theater or some sort of, acting program or intensive training instead of having to learn those lessons like real time and auditions. And I'd go somewhere and they'd be like, okay, you're supposed to sing 16 to 32 bars. Where's your book? And I'm like, I was just going to sing it a cappella. I didn't know I needed a book. And they're like, clocking me right there. Like, we're not giving this role to this girl. She's inexperienced. Or I didn't sound well, or I didn't choose the songs that fit my voice well, where there are like whole trainings for things like that. So I don't think it changed like huge things, but who knows where I could have been if I was just properly trained in those ways. And then the other one would be, because I think I had the opposite problem of you. I'm not saying I like fucked around a lot or whatever, but I am saying like there were some quality men that I just like wasted time trying to hang out with, or like that I shouldn't have. Like, yeah, it was fun and it was experimental, but like there's never a time where somebody should be able to just like text me at 3 a.m. and I just am like, yep, I'll be right over. like I like obviously me now, like when's the last time I've even seen 3 a.m. right? But there were some times.
You're actually seeing more 3 a.m. recently.
Well, I'm just like raging through the night, right?
And we're not talking about partying.
Yeah, like I would definitely like hook up with a boy one time and then be like, well, we might be seeing each other now, and it's like, bitch, no, y'all aren't. Like just things like that. So, you know, I had to give up my hoe card when I met you. Well, not really. We've had some fun, but I would definitely tell my older self, like, if somebody is honestly just like wasting your time and just being a complete asshole, like you don't have to just put up with like stupid shit that they say. You can keep it pushing. And I think I don't do that now, obviously with you, which is why you never have to guess with me, you know?
Yeah.
I would also invest in Instagram.
Oh, yeah. And maybe buy Bitcoin.
And maybe Amazon as well.
Maybe
I would put
some
some
Bitcoin.
stock in that, because I remember when things went from Facebook to Instagram. I was like, nobody's going to be in an app that's just the photos. Like, we want the whole thing. And then I was like, what a fucking
We
idiot.
are so shallow that we just actually want photos.
Well, it's not just photos anymore. It is reels and links and all this stuff now. But there was a time where it was just photos and it was still thriving. So I guess those would be my big ones. But I don't know. I think the big takeaway from this movie is that we all sort of have an inner child inside of us, and we're all figuring out lessons. Like, I mean, we were talking on this show a couple weeks ago how I got like scammed into an Instagram thing, and it feels just like, damn, at my big age I'm still getting hacked or whatever, but it happens like that.
It'll probably happen again.
And it's really satisfying watching Inventing Anna right now on Netflix, because you're not satisfying. Let me say what I gotta say before somebody says like, bitch, what? If you're not watching Inventing Anna, it's this like girl who's like this Russian pretending to be a German heiress, and she's scamming like huge investors and financiers and bankers, like people who have reputable sources. Like, so she's completely infiltrated New York's like high society, and stolen millions of dollars from tons of people. And
okay,
let me finish.
Sorry.
In the grand scheme of things, she has stole millions of dollars, be it from friends, bankers, investors, whatever. And these people are, you know, in their 40s, 50s, and 60s and got scammed by this lady. So sometimes it just makes me feel like, you know, or even all the kids from Firefest, obviously, like, you know, fuck a bunch of rich kids, but there were tons of people in the Bahamas that got screwed from this shit too. So even when it comes to scams, I'm kind of like, you know what, let me not be so hard on myself, because there are some people that are like geniuses and are trained to like fuck with people's shit. So let me not be completely, you know, Ben's going to be hard on me still. But when things like that happen, it's just like, okay, lesson learned. Here's some things to watch out for in the future, because there are some very high profile people got scammed by this girl.
See,
that is a fact.
See,
can you at least agree with me that some high profile people got scammed by and
right.
I'll just do a wire transfer.
Yeah, that's her voice. I think you saying that geniuses even got scammed. I think
I was saying she's a genius
she's a genius who scams. Okay, got it. Yes.
Like the imposter, you know, these people that like scammed people, they're con artists and they're trained to do this.
Right. But the bigger takeaway also is that rich people doesn't necessarily mean intelligent people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying what I was saying was there are older people. Like we think in our minds. You remember that one time you threw a full temper tantrum because we got like scammed by these people in Thailand, which
but
we got scammed out of like $30, but Ben threw a full tantrum in Thailand.
It's a little bit more than 30. It was like 60, but not a huge deal.
Okay, so we got scammed thousands of dollars.
60 times 2. It was 120. It was a ticket that should not have been. It was $60 over the price. Anyway, not a big deal. Totally over it. go on.
No, Ben threw a full temper
Fucking
tantrum, and I was
bullshit.
just like, we just lost like maybe $60. Ben, like, relax.
120,
But if you take out what we actually should have paid for it, it wasn't 120. We weren't getting on the ferry free of charge.
Right.
You're still not over it.
Yeah, and not a huge deal. Not a huge deal. I'm not totally fine. I'm not stressed. I am not stressed.
But sometimes in life, like, you will waste money. Like,
Yeah.
and you don't want to, and you don't mean to, but you don't have to be like, because we couldn't talk for hours after that scene that you threw in Thailand. I was just like,
let's bring it back actually to the short story.
Bring it back.
The short film.
Well, the short film sparked all of this conversation because it is just there is a part in the short film where, you know, Gia gets her stuff together and becomes the grown up, and it's just like sexy and going on the dance floor. And then at that point, you see all of the people in the club slowly start to turn into little kids because we're all just like a bigger version of our smaller selves.
And it's a beautiful ending. Do you have any sighs?
I don't. I really enjoyed it. I think it was well timed and well paced. I really like that. That the kids called each other like, well, 16, if you wouldn't have blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
This movie also, I think we saw Bebe's Kids together, but it definitely had a Bebe's Kids, if you're familiar with that. I think Bebe's Kids came out in the 90s. If you're familiar with Bebe's Kids, that came out, go back and watch that because I just miss these kinds of like 2D cartoons that are just like kids with braids, just like giving each other shit, playing the dozens, if you will. I love those kinds of animations.
Yeah, it could have been longer. My only sigh it was very short. I would have been interested to see.
It was a Spark short.
I think a Spark short, yes, sure, exactly. I think it would be really interesting to see more like ages as well, like maybe to see a sequel when you have an older woman, like an 80-year-old woman, who her 1-year-old self shows up, or 10-year-old, her 16 or 20 or 30, her 40. I think they could have extended this. And I think in that way, it would have been a little bit more accessible. Like the specificity of 21-year-old really just is for anybody over the age of 21. I think like maybe, and I think high schoolers and middle schoolers could watch this, but it really hit a lot harder if you are a millennial and you are over the age of, you're over the age of 21 now. But I think, yeah. Sorry.
It's okay. I'll fix it later. Well, we loved 20-something. It's a super easy watch if you get a chance to watch it sometime this week. And Ben, with that being said, why don't you warp up the show, baby?
In conclusion, watch the Pixar shorts. They're really fun. I think they're called SparksShorts. Also, this was made completely in quarantine, and the fact that they made every single bit of this in quarantine is just a shout out to the amazing animators of Pixar. And enjoy.
Also, Aphton Corbin, the black girl that worked on this Pixar short, was also on the team that did Soul as well. So that she's
one of the animators. Yeah.
Yeah. So she's still out here working out this bitch. Thanks, man. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of the Sci-Fi Sci Podcast. Up next, as we mentioned earlier, we will be watching A Wrinkle in Time, directed by Ava DuVernay. Also, we get to see a younger Storm Reed. So be sure to watch A Wrinkle in Time for episode 79, and we will see y'all next week for the show. Bye, y'all.
Great job, Amber. You need to go lie down?
Yeah.
I'll take this. I'll put this all away.
I literally had to hold it back there. Go ahead.
It's so funny.
This is the post show. Oh, I'm a pregnant mama and I'm tired. Oh.